you for joining. Today we are going to cover about how to create Azure subscriptions using the REST API. So you might have created subscriptions from the portal, but how the experience is going to be if you are creating using the REST API or PowerShell or using the CLI. So before we start, this requires you need to have enterprise agreement or Microsoft customer agreement or a partner agreement in order to use this API. So if you're a pay-as-you-go customer, you will not be able to use this API. So that's the first thing. So let's go through the presentation before we actually start working on the API. Let's go through the presentation and understand what can be done or what needs to be done in order to do this. So some of the prerequisites, like I said, you need to have an Azure Enterprise Agreement. I don't have a MCA or MPA setup. That's the reason why I'm not going with the demonstration. However, the process is going to be pretty much the same. It's just that the way how Enterprise Agreement looks and the hierarchy or the levels are a little different. You might have the agreement, then it comes to departments, accounts, subscription, but it's in a different way when it comes to MCA. Like you might have invoice sections, billing profiles, etc. So the scopes and the way MPA or MCA is, that's little different compared to EA agreement, but when it comes to execution of this API, the process is very much same. So if you're good with enterprise agreement, you can execute one in MCA and MPA as well. So the process is pretty much same. Then I recommend that you install the PowerShell module because for creating the bearer tokens for the user in the first place, PowerShell has a built-in command for that. It would be useful. Then we also need to create some GUIDs while we are assigning roles if we are working with service principals. So for some commands, a couple of commands, we'll be using PowerShell. So it's better that you have Azure PowerShell installed on your computer. For cloud, even cloud shell is fine, but I won't recommend that, because if this is a new account that where you're going to try, then you need to create a subscription in order to mount the storage account, and also that's another thing. So it's better that you have Azure PowerShell module installed on your computer. Then you can use Postman, my favorite tool for calling the APIs. We can test the APIs from Postman and verify if we are getting the results that we are looking for. The roles that you require, you need to be an EA account administrator. So like I said, your company or the organization should have an enterprise agreement, and you should be added as an account administrator in that enrollment in order to perform the actions that we are going to see here today. Not an owner, not an RBAC role that I'm talking about. You need to have an account admin role in the enterprise portal. So if you don't have that role or would like to implement this, feel free to reach out to your EA administrators. Only your EA administrators will be able to give you the account admin role. Secondly, if you're planning to use service principal for automating this entire process, you should have the permissions in Azure AD to create an enterprise application or the app registration. That is something that you require. In case you don't have that, you can request someone in your organization, like your global administrator, to create one and give you the the client ID and the secret. So that's also possible. So basically there are two methods available for creating subscriptions programmatically. The first thing is you can use your account admin profile to create subscriptions. That's very easy. You're already an account administrator. That means you are a person who is supposed to create enterprise subscriptions. So you already have the permissions built into your role. You just have to call the API and it can be created. Second thing is you can use a service principal, but in order to use this method, your service principal should have the subscription creator role assigned to it. So that's 3-4 step process where you need to create, assign the role, and then create another token. So it's a process. I'll show that while we move to the demo. So these are the two methods that are available for you to create subscriptions programmatically. So the first thing, using account admin, like I said, it's a pretty straightforward process. You have to generate a token from Azure PowerShell. So there's a command for that, Get-AzAccessToken. That's the command. So once you're logged into the PowerShell, you can simply run that command and it will return you the bearer token that can be used in your API calls. Second thing is you need to find your EA number and the account ID. So you can find this using a single API call. There is a get billing account API call. If you make that call, you'll be able to see the EA enrollment number as well as the account number and the scope that needs to be used in the API. So you'll get to know that while we go through the demo. And finally, you just have to call the subscription creation API call, and your subscription will be provisioned. It's very straightforward. Using service principal. So using service principal, because you don't want to depend on a user, you might have some sort of a script or something written. So whenever a subscription is required, you just have to run the script, and basically there is no user dependency on this. So there's a service principal that's gonna, place the that's gonna work with the AD, get the token, and then complete the creation process. So first of all, you have to create an enterprise application. Then you have to note down the object ID of that application. Once we have the object ID, we also need to create a new GUID. So every role assignment that we are going to give requires a unique GUID. So there are online GUID generators. Also, you can use the New-Guid PowerShell command to generate a GUID. So this GUID will be used in our API call while we assign the subscription creator permission to the service principal. So the number that you see there, A0BCEE, that's a role definition ID for subscription creator. So if you need to have if you want the service principal to create subscriptions, then the service principal should have this particular role definition assigned to its object ID. Once that's done, the assignment part is done. You don't have to repeat that process every time. The four steps that you see at the very beginning, that's a one-time process. Once that's done, you just have to use the next two steps. Like whenever you need, you just have to work with the service principal. You just have to work with the AD and get the token, use that token to create the subscription. So now we will get started with our demo. We'll see how the entire process that we have seen in the slides, how these can be done on the portal. So let me just start with PowerShell. So we need to get the token generated. So I'll just go to PowerShell and I'll log in with my EA account admin credentials. Then I will generate a token. So once I'm in PowerShell, so I already have Azure PowerShell module installed. So I'll just go with login as the account, and the system will ask me to log in. I'll pick up the account admin email address. So it is saying that I already have one subscription there, and this is the tenant ID. Now what I need to do is I just have to use the command Get-AzAccessToken. For easy copying, what I can do is I can just put this within a bracket and look for a token. So this is the token that I need. So I can just copy this and save it in my notepad. So I have it saved in my notepad right now. So next thing what we need right now is we need to check what all billing accounts the user have access to, or what all enrollment accounts the user has access to. So for that, we'll be following the Microsoft official documentation. There is an API call written there. So let me open the documentation. So this is a documentation where it says programmatically create Azure Enterprise Agreement subscriptions with the latest APIs. So if I scroll down, there is an option which says find accounts you have access to, and here is the API call that I have to make. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this API call. I will open Postman and I'll make a new call. So it was a GET request. I'll just copy it here, and in the headers I need to pass the bearer token, which is already copied to my notepad. So if you see this X mark like this, that means you might have copied some spaces or something. So if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the spaces here. You just have to remove those. Yeah, and then you're good. So I place the authorization here. It's a GET request, so I don't have to pass anybody. If I click on send, um, here I'm able to see the billing accounts I have access to. This is the billing account, that is the enrollment number, and this is the account ID. That's what you see here. All right, so I confirm that I have the permissions. Now what I need to do is I have to create the subscription. It's very straight process. So let's just go back to the documentation that we were referring, and let's see what is the API call which is required for that. So if we come back to the documentation, we can see that the REST call says that we have to make this API call with a payload where there is a billing scope which contains the billing account and the enrollment account numbers, which we actually got from the first API call, a display name, what name should be given to your subscription, and the workload. It can be a production workload or it can be a dev test workload. So depending upon what kind of subscription that you want to create, you'll be choosing your workload value. So let me copy this one here, and let me go back to Postman. New tab, paste here. This is going to be a put request. We need to have a body here, that's row JSON. You can put an alias here, dev sub 2 or something, dev sub or something like that. And now we need to the body, so I can copy this one and paste it here. I can click on beautify, just to beautify it. Here the billing account, you have to replace this with your enrollment number. So that we already have our enrollment number here, so I can simply copy that. Then the account number, sorry, the account ID, so it is here. I can copy that as well. Now you can give a name to the subscription, API sub 1, something like that. Production, that's fine. So let's see if this works. So I'm just gonna hit send and see what is the response that we are getting. The header is missing, so I will go back in here, headers, authorization, bearer, space. I already have the token here, I can completely copy it. And send. So it's doing something. You can see that the request is sending. It says that the provisioning state is accepted. So we haven't got a confirmation yet. So we need to constantly poll this API to understand, if this was a successful operation or not. So in order to do that, what we have to do is put this to none, convert this to a get operation, and hit send. You'll be able to see that it is succeeded. So we have the subscription created. We can confirm this from PowerShell, just by coming here and get AZ subscriptions. You can see that the API sub 1 has been created here. So that's how you use the admin account to create subscriptions programmatically. Now what we are going to see is how we can use a service principal to automate this entire process. So if we go back to the documentation, at the very top in the prerequisite, there is a page where it says, similarly, to use a service principal to create an ES subscription, you must grant that service principal the ability to create subscriptions. So that's what we are going to do right now. So first of all, we need to create one enterprise application. For that, you need to have proper permissions in your AD. So I'll just switch over to my admin account, and I'll be creating a new enterprise application. So this is me logged in from my enterprise, not enterprise, Azure admin account. So I'll go to Azure Active Directory. I'll go to enterprise applications, a new application. Here you can click on create your own application. and register an application to integrate with Azure AD. So here you can put any name. For simplicity, I'll say API SPN sub. I'll click on create, and I'll keep it within this tenant. So I'll just go ahead and register this. So once it is registered, I can go back to my enterprise applications and just look for this API EA sub. It takes a second. You just have to refresh because that's newly created. So you can just go back and come back in. Okay, so we have the properties and everything. So I just have to copy the object ID, and we will save it to our notepad. Object ID. Good. We have that. Now we will go back to here and go to app registrations, and I will search with the object ID. If I'm not able to find it, then I'll search for the name. I think API. Yeah, there you go. So here there are a couple of other things. You have to copy this client ID. So this is I'll just put it as client ID. This is the client ID, and I need to have a client secret generated. For that, I need to go to certificates and secrets, new client secret. I'll just give a name. You can set the expiry as well. So now you're able to see the secret value. I can copy this. I can save it to my notepad here. Great. All right. So now what we need to do is we have to go back to our documentation and see what is the API call to give or assign the role definition. So this is the API call that we need to make in order to give the permission. So we already have the billing account name, which is our enrollment ID. We already have the enrollment account name, which is our account ID. And there is another thing which is called the role assignment name. So this is where we're going to use PowerShell to generate a GUID, because every role definition or the role assignment, we are going to represent it using a unique ID. So you need to have a GUID generated. So we have a GUID generated here. I'll just copy that and I'll keep it in the notepad. So GUID, that's the GUID I need. Now let me go back to the documentation. I'm just going to copy this one, go back to Postman. I'll just duplicate this tab so that I get the token added there. I don't have to copy it again. So I'll just paste this one here. This is a put request. So I'll make this a put request again. Here the billing account name, I need to replace it with the enrollment number. So that is the enrollment number, and the enrollment account name, I have to replace it with my account ID. Now here there is assignment name, right? So this assignment name, that we are going to replace it with the GUID that we generated in PowerShell. So I'm just going to copy this one here. And it's here. So we have the authorization, the headers copied from the other call because this is a duplicate. Now we need to pass some body. So I'll just put it to row JSON. And if we go back to the documentation, it says that the body contains, this is what we are expecting in the body: the properties, the tenant ID, and the role definition ID. So I'll just copy this. I'll go back to Postman. I'll just click on Beautify. So the principal ID. So this is going to be the object ID of the service principal that or the enterprise app registration that we have done. So we have already copied the object ID to the notepad. I'll just take that, place it here. Now the tenant ID. So we need to go back to our Azure portal to find what is our tenant ID, or you can also find it from your PowerShell. That is also okay. So here it is. Can go back to Postman right now, replace it with ID. Now here you have to do the same thing, replace this with your enrollment ID and this with your account. So this is the role definition I was talking about when I was taking the presentation. So A0BCEE, that is the role definition used for a subscription creator role. So basically what it does is, as an account administrator, you're granting the service principal a subscription creator role in your enrollment. So let's click on send and see what response that we are getting. Perfect. So it says that it gives a 200 response. That means I have given the permission for the service principal to as a subscription creator to this enrollment. So now we will be going forward. What we will use is we will use the service principal to authenticate to AD, get the token, and create a subscription. So this entire thing can be automated using a workflow. Alright, so now what we are going to do is we are going to use the client ID and the client secret that we have copied to talk to Azure AD and get a Barrow token. So once we have the token, we will be using that to create our subscription. So let's, if you don't know how to get a token from Azure AD, feel free to watch my first video where I have clearly explained how to, make this API call and get the bearer token. So for simplicity, I'll just quickly click on bulk edit and let me open the notepad again. So the client ID, this is going to be the client ID. I'll place it here. The client secret, this is a client secret, and the resource is going to be https management.azure.com. We just need to copy this and go to the body and click on bulk edit and paste it here as well. So let's see if we are able to get a bearer token. Yeah, the tenant ID. I forgot to add the tenant ID. Let me go back to the PowerShell and copy the tenant ID. Yep, let's try now. Perfect, we got the token. Now we need to use this token in the very same API call which we tried with our account admin. So this was the API call which we made earlier. Here we're gonna change this again to a put request, and here I'm gonna give another alias, prod sub or something like that. If you're not able to recall this API call, let's go back in here. Let me go one step back. This is the same call which we have seen here, the put request, right? So I'll just need this. I'll copy this, minimize this one. I'll go to row JSON. So the data is already there because we have used it in the past. So prod sub, in the authorization, in the headers, this is a token from my user principal. So I'm just going to remove that and replace it with the token which I generated using my service principal. So let me come back in here, put the service principal, should be all good. Then let me go back to the body and make this API sub 2. Click on send. So it's doing something. Perfect. It says accepted. So in order to see the status, we can put it back to none and make this a get request and click on send. It says succeeded. So I can go back into my PowerShell and get AZ subscription. Perfect. I have my API subscription 2 created in the tenant. So this is how you can use you can use your service principal to create Azure subscription. So think of this way: you could write a script where you can put this entire thing in form of PowerShell script or something, and you can easily create a subscription whenever you need it. So that's the use of having programmatically creating subscriptions. Perfect. So I hope this was helpful for you. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.